Hi, everyone. Let's get started on assignment 2 of this week. So it's the 4-2 type activity using Photoshop's text effects to create your banner ad headline. So if you click into the guidelines and rubric, which I have open up here, you'll see that all of these elements are what is necessary for this assignment. So you'll be creating a relevant headline using Photoshop's typographic tools and techniques, and you will save the typographic artwork in a file as a layered PSD. So basically, if you read through this, you'll create a headline for your banner ad incorporating Photoshop's type tools and effects. So you want to refer back to the magazine ad and determine what the headline should say and how you can convert it into that web banner format. So the key here is consistency. You're creating an ad campaign in multiple ways. So with your print ad, you want that look to translate basically to your web banner. And of course, your final submission for this assignment should be that layered Photoshop file. It's 1280 by 300 pixels at 72 dpi. So you want to have a headline in there. And that is basically what's required. So you'll upload that file, and what you need is a layered PSD file showing that headline that you created using Photoshop's type tools and techniques. And of course, you want it to match the tone and style of the client's magazine ad. So, what I usually like to do when I get this started, let's go ahead and create our Photoshop file. So, we want to do a file new. You want your web banner to be 1200 by 300. 72 pixels per inch. I'm going to use a white background just so it's easy to see the text that I create. So this is the artboard that you'll be working with. And of course you can see it's a lot different than an 8.5 by 11. So part of the challenge is fitting the elements from your ad into this format. But we're going to start with text. So when I start this ad, I like to have my print ad open in Illustrator, and of course the style guide, so I can easily copy and paste what I need. And that's probably the easiest way to approach this, is copying and pasting elements. Because your web banner is 72 dpi, you can easily copy what you have in Illustrator and sort of format it into that canvas in Photoshop. So I'm going to start with the text because this is the most important element here. So I created this headline that says "Hello Relaxation." I used this Dazzle Unicase font. I have a couple different weights that I chose, and of course different sizes. So the easiest approach here is just copying. So I'm just highlighting my text. I'm going to copy it. And then in Photoshop, I'm going to use the type tool, and I'm going to draw out a paragraph box. You'll see it's going to put some lorem ipsum text in there, but I'm going to copy and paste my text from the ad. So it looks like it maintained, the sizing, the different font weights, and of course it brought in that purple color, which is great. So from here, I can adjust this. I'm going to do a Control or Apple T, and not holding the Shift key in Photoshop, I'm going to resize. And I know this is often trips people up, is, you do have to hold the Shift key in Illustrator, but not in Photoshop. So I'm going to resize that to where I want it and place it kind of where I think it's going to work out. And then we'll go from there. So now you can see I have two layers. One is the background layer, one is that text layer. And I'm going to add a drop shadow to my text. So you can see in my ad, I kind of created a little bit of an offset drop shadow just by copying the text, and I made the background text that green, and then I placed the purple text over it and sort of moved it so it was a little bit offset. But I'm going to mimic the look of that in Photoshop. So if I want to bring that green color in, easy enough to do. I can just go to that brand guide and then copy this color in, and then I can use the eyedropper tool to select that color. So I'm going to paste that in just as a smart object, and we can always delete this a little bit later as well. And then I'm going to go back to my type layer and go down here to the little effects panel, and I'm going to add a drop shadow. Now, I already have the green selected, but if I didn't, what I could do here essentially is just select this color. You can see my eyedropper tool here and hit OK. And right now it's set up so it looks, pretty much like it's offset. I'm going to go ahead and just, experiment with adjusting the distance and the spread and the size. And then, of course, you can adjust the angle of it. Just want it to be visible enough that when I do add a background in, you can see it and it sort of makes that text pop from the background. So once I get it to where I like, I'm going to hit OK. Now, of course, there's a variety of different techniques you can use here. I recommend sort of going through these. You can see there's a bevel and emboss. You can add a stroke. So let's say I wanted to add like a white stroke to my text. You can position it to the inside, the outside, and the center. You can add an inner shadow, inner glow, outer glow. There's a bunch of different techniques here that you can choose from, and I recommend going through and experimenting and seeing what you like. But of course, maintaining that consistent look and feel with your ad, and of course with the web banner. So one of the things that I would recommend doing is also bringing in your logo. I chose the purple logo here in my ad, but I'm going to go ahead and grab that from the style guide. I'm going to copy it, and we'll go ahead and just paste it. You can paste it in as a smart object, and that'll maintain the vector capabilities. And you can resize it. Once again, I'm not holding the shift key. And you'll notice because it is a smart object, when you resize it, it's not going to pixelate or anything like that. So we'll add that in at a size that I think will work well. And then I'm going to go ahead and we'll get rid of that green box. So one of the other things that I usually like to do, and I like to point this out to everybody, with a web banner like this, the point is to get the viewer to click. So you want to, of course, maintain that visual hierarchy that you built in your ad. And of course, that's going to look a little different here. So because we read from left to right, I placed my headline over here. So it's sort of the first thing that you notice is that hello relaxation, and then the eyes kind of led into the rest. So the rest of this negative space will kind of determine what we want to do with this as we move forward. You'll notice, of course, in my ad, I have a whole lot of different elements here. Not all of these are going to fit in that smaller space, but that's okay. Um, One thing that I am going to do here, and you don't have to do this necessarily for this assignment, what I have here is pretty much what's required. But if you want to take it a step further and really start thinking about the way you want your web banner to look, you can go ahead and do this. I'm just going to take my background from the ad and I'm going to copy it and paste it into my web banner as a smart object. And then I'm going to resize this, of course, because it's going to constrain a little bit to that artboard. Then, of course, we can move some things around. I'll take this layer, I'm going to pull it down right above the background layer. And then I'm also going to bring in this gradient that I created. And this is the great thing about working in between these programs. So, you can easily copy and paste something from Illustrator into Photoshop. It's much more difficult the other way around. You can't exactly copy and paste from Photoshop into Illustrator, but we can do it this way. So pasting my gradient in as a smart object, and it's just going to add that little bit of green to the bottom, which we can sort of play around with the look and feel of. So with my logo, I create a little bit of a drop shadow to this, just to make it stand out. And I don't want to add the green, I'll just use like a darker color for this one, adjust the opacity a little bit so it's not quite as dark, and adjust the size and spread and distance just to give it a little extra boost and give it some contrast from the background. The other thing to think about here, of course, you want the viewer to click. In our ads, you should have, some sort of offer, that's kind of calling to the viewer, so this says book today and get a free spa package. I think you can definitely use this text in that web banner and whatever text that you've created as your offer, because you do want to have a call to action, but you also want to have a call to action button. So this is something that you should also think about creating as we move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and pick my rectangle tool, and you can choose a fill color here. I'm going to use the purple as my fill. And if I want some rounded corners, let's just go with 15 pixels. And we can just draw out what is essentially a button. And I don't want to stroke on this. I'm going to go ahead and eliminate that. And this is something you can play with as you move forward too. You can add a gradient, you can add other colors, drop shadow, a bevel and emboss on that. So essentially I'm just going to put book now as my text. We'll make this white. I'm going to center that up, maybe make it a little bit bigger. And then this is kind of the start of my call to action button. And as we move forward, we'll be looking at some different ways to animate this and really kind of draw the eye to it. But for now, this is basically what you need. You don't even need these two elements or the background just basically play around with the type tool, and of course, maintaining that consistency with the look of your ad. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as a PSD file, and we'll just say Web banner headline, and save it as a PSD file, and you'll upload that to the classroom. So you'll add that layered PSD file showing your headline, and that is basically what is needed for this assignment. So of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know.